Here we are, ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Ask the Lawyer, and this time we're going to ask about some not much needed changes that are coming out of what was a tragedy. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. Here to answer our questions is attorney Wayne Parsons of the Wayne Parsons Law Offices in Honolulu. Wayne, thank you for making some time today to answer our questions. I appreciate that. I know we've got some good news to share, but let's go back a little bit to the beginning. Tell us the story of Evan English.
So Evan English was a boy, 4 years old. He was two months away from his 5th birthday. His dad is in the military. He lived with his family at military family housing in Honolulu. They had just moved into a brand new house built on the military base. And Evan and his brother had been talking to a friend outside the house, and they were arguing with a friend in a playful sort of way. They ran in the house. They went up to their room, and they were able to get up on the windowsill in the bedroom, even though the parents had moved everything away from that windowsill. The window was locked. 5-year-old boys, the brother was 6, are very agile and able to climb anything. And they got up in the windowsill and they opened up the window, and they were yelling out at the other boy who was out on the sidewalk. And Evan pushed on the window screen, which is one of those cheap plastic, window screens that are very common these days. And the window screen popped out, as they are prone to do, and Evan fell out. And a little bit of the background story on that is that 5-year-old children are the ones who fall out of windows most frequently. That's because their height and their head size are such that when they lean their head forward, if they start falling and their head goes forward, the head pulls them. The head is a heavier object than their body, and it pulls them. And so a lot of 5-year-olds fall out of windows just for that reason. And Evan, the screen popped out. He couldn't stop his forward momentum, and he fell through the window. His brother Jason got a hold of him but couldn't hold him. They were right over the garage. There's a concrete driveway there, and he hit his head, and 2 days later he died from those injuries.
Now,
that's how it started.
That was in what year, Wayne?
That was in 2011. And then in 2013, I filed a lawsuit on behalf of the family against the contractor that built the houses, against the United States government. And that case settled in 2015 after a lot of litigation, very contentious litigation. And at the time I took the case, I told Commander and Mrs. English, who were somewhat concerned about getting money for the death of their son. That concept was difficult for them. And I told them that the lawsuit was one thing we would do. It would be the last thing that Evan could do in his life for the family. It was his last chance to do something where he could contribute to his brothers and sisters and his mom and dad. But that when we were done with the lawsuit, that I would work with them to try to change the building codes and make it so children didn't fall out of windows. And that was in Evan's memory. So that's kind of the story. In 2015, we started this quest to change the building code so this doesn't happen to other people, and to educate the public about child window falls.
Well, let's pick it up then. You said something that doesn't happen to other people. I imagine you've learned a lot more about this than most people know in the last 7-8 years since it first happened. Is this a common thing? How often is this happening, Wayne, in your research?
About 15,000 children fall out of windows every year.
Wow.
That's in the U.S. There are 1.2 million children in military family housing. There are 15 to 20 deaths every year. The death of a child, and they tend to be in this age group that Evan is in, is the most tragic, horrible thing that can ever happen to a family. It is a devastating loss, and I like to think that it's a loss for all of us to lose that opportunity.
And so, obviously, you said you've been working to help try and change codes since the case was resolved. Tell us what you've been doing and what's happened.
So it's very interesting that the military has a building code that's separate from the private building code. So we started out on the military building codes, and they had a pretty good building code. And they had a provision in the building code that would allow for window fall protection devices to be put in the windows. But they were not enforcing it. And the window fall protection, when it was offered, when somebody put in a device to stop something like this from happening, the devices were completely and totally ineffective. They didn't work. And the excuse for using those kind of devices was that anything that would stop a child from falling out of the window that would be effective would violate the fire codes. This was completely a myth. This was wrong. I've gotten every fire marshal that we've talked to across the country has said, that's not a problem. You can put in effective devices. So we set out to change the military building code, and that meant going to the military and pointing out what are the effective devices and what are the not ineffective devices, and trying to get them to write the code so that only effective devices would comply. And there are several of them, but we needed to eliminate those devices that didn't work.
And so where do things stand now?
So in 2017, through our lobbying efforts, and when I say I took all of my experts. I had 7 experts in this case who were architects, fire specialists, window safety specialists, manufacturers of devices. So it was a small group, all volunteers. We lobbied the military. And in 2017, Representative Turner from Ohio sponsored a bill that is called Evans Law that changed the way the code was written in the military code so that it would only allow for effective devices. And that law was passed. And there was a glitch in it. There's a little technical glitch in it because somebody changed some language in the bill just before it got enacted into law. And so from 2017 to 2019, we lobbied again to change a couple of words in that provision to take a loophole out of the code language, the military code language. And in 2019, as I sit here today, it's been corrected, it's been changed. We're waiting for Congress to pass the bill. We don't anticipate any problem, but we know it's never over till it's over. But we think we've now taken care of the military building code. And it mandates fall protection devices.
And you said some changes have been made voluntarily, correct?
It's very interesting, and I give great credit to the defendant, the adversary in the litigation. It's a company called Lend-Lease America. It's a very big military privatization housing contractor, and they did the same thing that we did, only we didn't realize they were doing it. They went out and said, we're going to make sure kids don't fall out of the windows in homes that we build on military bases. And they spent a lot of money. They did a lot of work. They really showed what a responsible corporation should do. And they came up with the same solution that we came up with. We're trying to change the codes. They're trying to fix their houses. And so they are now implementing effective window fall protection devices in the houses that they build in areas where it's a problem. It's more of a problem in warm climates where people open up their windows.
And is your hope, Wayne, that this expands beyond just military bases as far as the code?
We've had 2 tracks. One was to get the military code changed and implemented, and we're doing that. And we then also started on the international private codes. There's an organization called the International Code Council, the ICC. They publish what a lot of people call the standard building code or the uniform building code. And that organization, that applies to every community in the United States. They send their code to every building official in every community in the United States. It's like 10,000 different building departments. And those codes get implemented around the country. They apply to private construction, and we've gone and we're in the process of lobbying them. We spent 4 years now lobbying that organization. We failed the first time through, and we've we're not giving up. We're going back next year with another amendment to the International Private Building Code, the Uniform Building Code. And we're hopeful that we're going to be successful, and we're going to keep working until we are.
What's your advice, Wayne, for somebody who may see this video and they currently live in military housing and maybe they're worried about the safety of their windows for their small children? What's your advice to them?
They should definitely look up Evans Law. It's real easy. If you go on your computer and Google Evans Law, you'll pull up Representative Turner's speech before Congress, the story of Evan English, and the passage of this law. Go to the command at the military base you're at and ask them what they're doing to comply with Evans Law. I know that the application is scattered. It's not like somebody's walking onto the base and making them do it. They've got to pick this up and do it. And there's in Hawaii, it's being done here in Hawaii, but across the country, because we want this to be across every military base across the country, they should go to command and ask about what's being done, and that will encourage the base to look at the issue.
Have you been in touch with, kept in touch with Evan's parents, and if so, what is their reaction to all this that's happening?
Well, they're very active in this. The father, Commander English, although he spends time on assignment out to sea and in danger zones around the world protecting the country, he's very active with our group, as is Mrs. English, and so they're supporting it, and they're enthusiastically in favor of this, and they want to see it done, and we intend to get it done.
It seems like, Wayne, and you probably have more experience with this than I do, but it seems like parents who lose a child in a tragic way like this, they get, one of their biggest concerns is trying to keep it from happening to anybody else. Is that what you've seen?
I'm sorry.
Has that been your experience with this too?
Yes, I think parents who have lost a child, the greatest crushing blow to them is that child will never be around, and the child somehow will be forgotten. And so Evan English is alive and well in our minds and our hearts, and we're doing this with Evan, as is the family. And I think that's, they didn't realize, they were good parents. They tried to protect the kids getting to the windows, but they didn't quite realize how dangerous this was. And we're trying to make sure that the public knows how dangerous it is. Grandparents take care of their grandchildren all of the times in their houses. Children fall out of their grandparents' second floor windows, and they didn't know. They weren't thinking about it. Back in the 1950s, window screens were made of wood frames and metal frames, powerful, strong. You had a hard time getting the window screens out. Mm-hmm. And that changed in the 1950s and 60s with these plastic screens, and here we are today, where they're saving a few dollars on window screens, but 15 to 20 children die each year because of it.
Well, Wayne, I appreciate you telling us about this amazing story, and it's terrific to hear that Evan and how he's helping to save lives. And thank you for telling us all about his story and for your commitment to making this change.
Yeah, I would just add one final comment,
Sure.
And that is that when tragedies happen, it's a lot more than people getting a lawyer and going out and suing somebody and putting the blame on somebody and getting them to pay money. There's a lot higher purpose here, and I think this case exemplifies the value of this system where, number one, we sorted out the problems in the litigation, and we got a settlement that both sides agreed to was fair. And then both sides have gone out independently to change the world and make the world a safer place. That is the big picture of what trial lawyers like myself, what we do. And it's a goal I have in every case, to look and see, is there some way we can prevent this from happening? It's not just about getting the money and everybody goes back to their normal life.
I think it says a lot about you, Wayne, because you could have just washed your hands and moved on at the end of that case, but you've spent the next few years going above and beyond to make a change for the greater good, and I think it says a lot about you. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyers. My guest has been attorney Wayne Parsons, based in Honolulu. If you want the best information about personal injury, or you're ready to choose a lawyer that lawyers choose, make sure to visit askthelawyer.com. Also, please take a second, subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the button at the bottom of the screen. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com.